A warm festive welcome to you all. I'm Nicole, I'm the RinR Reach Program Coordinator, and I'm here today to talk to you about the silly season, how to balance our indulgence over the Christmas and New Year's break. I'm here today with Fiona.
Hi everyone.
And Sarah.
Hello.
From the RinR Reach Program, and I'd also like to introduce Nona, the Coordinator for the Alcohol and Other Drugs Service at Women's Health and Family Services. I think that the first place to start would be, what is indulgence versus overindulgence?
My experience of indulgence is a bit of pleasure seeking. You tolerate little extravagances in your life. You do it every now and again, and you don't do it all the time. That's indulgence for me. However, overindulgence goes into a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I agree, Nona. I think indulgence is something that we don't do very often. It's a treat. It's usually around this time of year or special times of year. But that overindulgence is taking things too far to the next level, and sometimes it can be a detriment to ourselves or to others around us as well.
Yeah, I think those indulgences in our life can be quite important in terms of just being able to relax, have a bit of fun, let go. Often life's full of seriousness and work and chores. Although when it's overindulgence, it's when those little pleasures, little time out becomes a habit. It becomes the routine, and the thing that was a treat becomes the norm. And I think that's the distinction between those.
We spoke about what is indulgence and overindulgence can be different for different people. And so a couple of beers after work might be something that is normal for some people, and for some people it might be an indulgence, and then it might be that it goes over and it's daily and goes into more overindulgence. So what's good for one might not be good for another person.
And a good example of that might be financial indulgences, depending on what sort of finances you have in your life.
Some of us can afford to, some of us might go out and buy a new house for Christmas, and that's seen as being normal, whereas for others that's just ridiculous. It's completely over the top. So it's dependent on the person. It's really individual.
So it's different activities, and I think I'd like to stick with the first example that you gave around alcohol. Let's talk about national alcohol guidelines and what that means.
So the National Alcohol Guidelines were produced in 2009, and they really are a guide to reducing harm and reducing risks around drinking alcohol, either over the lifetime or in a one-off occasion. At the outset, though, they do say that there is no safe alcohol drinking level or risk-free drinking of alcohol. So the first two guidelines are based on healthy adults, and the recommendations in those guidelines is no more than 2 standard drinks per day to reduce risks of lifetime health. So those are your lifestyle.
Yep, cancers, diabetes, cardiovascular, weight gain, even down to teeth decay. There's a lot of dangers. We have to remember that alcohol is a poison in a nutshell, and so that's going to have an effect on our body.
And then the second guideline is no more than 4 standard drinks in one occasion to reduce the risks of injury, so accidents, falling over, not getting into fights and arguments. So they're for a healthy adult. The third and fourth guideline is there's no safe drinking level under the age of 18, and under the age of 18 drinking alcohol should not happen. And the fourth guideline refers to pregnant and or breastfeeding women, and that's no safe drinking level, so it is recommended not to drink when pregnant and or breastfeeding.
Can we go back to what standard drinks are? Because I know that looking at these glasses here, that wine glass in particular does not look like the wine glass I've got at home. So can you explain to me a little bit more about what a standard drink is?
Yeah. So standard drink is 10 grams of alcohol in any fluid amount. So as you said, we've got in front of us here the 4 main types of drinks that people might consume. The first one is your spirit, and that's a nip, and it's 30 mils. So you can see there that that's not a large amount of alcohol, and that's 30 mils because spirits tend to do have a high alcohol content. The next standard drink we've got here is your fortified wines, your sherries and ports, and that's 60 mils. Now I think these two, particularly in a bar or hotel, are less confusing because bars and hotels tend to use standard measures, so 30 mils or 230 mil pours. But as you said, when we get to the wine glass, a standard drink of wine is 100 mils. Now that's not the same as what hotels and bars necessarily use. They use a different definition of a standard pour, and that's 150 mils. So that line that's on your glass may be, according to the National Alcohol Guidelines, and maybe 100 mils, which is your standard drink, or it could be the 150 mils that the bar uses to define their standard pour. So you may think you've had one standard drink if you've had a glass of wine in a bar, but in fact you could have had 1.5 standard drinks. And then we come on over to beer. So full strength beer is 285 mils is a standard drink. So that's your midi size. However, again, if you buy a bottle or a can, they can tend to be anywhere between 0.8 to 1.8 standard drinks within that beer bottle or can, and that's dependent on whether it's sort of low strength, mid-strength or full-strength beer. And you've also got some really high-strength beers when you get into stouts and your heavy lagers. So that's what a standard drink is. I think what is really been the significant change from the previous National Alcohol Guidelines is they made a distinction between men and women and how much men could drink and how much women could drink in order to either reduce health risks over a lifetime or in a single occasion of drinking. That is now changed. It's across the board for men and women. So it's 2 drinks a day to reduce lifetime health risks and 4 drinks in any one sitting to reduce the health risks related to injury.
Another important change was that they brought in this idea that we should have 3 free alcohol days a week. They don't have to be consecutive days. They can just, they can be Monday, Wednesday, Friday. But it's really important because the liver regenerates itself naturally. It almost fixes itself. And if you don't give it the time to do it, it won't go through that process. So really important that everyone tries to incorporate that into a healthy lifestyle as well.
Yeah. So there's a lot of myths surrounding alcohol. Can we explore what they are?
A lot of the time it's about drinking coffee can sober you up, having a cold shower, fresh air, getting some fresh air, exercise, you can sweat it out, eating bread or any other sort of food to make sure that it absorbs the alcohol, and drinking lots of water. So some of these myths, with coffee, for example, if you drink coffee, it's a stimulant, so it actually heightens your mood, makes you an alert drunk, which can be actually quite dangerous because you might think that you're okay to drive or to swim, and you get in the car or get in the pool and you're quite alert, but you've actually got the same intoxication levels.
And that's the same with the energy drinks as well, isn't it?
The energy drinks are, they're quite dangerous. A lot of people are experiencing a lot of fallout from drinking Red Bull and vodka and things like that. Cold showers won't sober you up. They might feel as though they refresh you, but they won't actually sober you up because it takes quite a while for the liver to break down the alcohol in your blood. Fresh air, you'll feel fresher, but you won't actually be sobering up. Exercise, a lot of people believe that you can sweat it out of you, but your body still has to go through the process of breaking it down, and so you will still be intoxicated. A lot of kids talk about eating bread, and eating other things before, but if you're drinking lots of alcohol, you're still going to have a high content in your body, and breaking that down is going to be the same.
Though I think it is really important, we do talk about reducing the risks of harm when drinking alcohol, and having a meal.
Having a meal before
certainly doesn't.
is certainly a good thing.
Yep.
Interspersing alcoholic drinks with non-alcoholic drinks, so having a glass of water, I think those things are really important.
Yeah, on that note though, it is water, not soft drink.
Yeah.
If you have a Coke in between or a soft drink in between alcohol, you're actually not going to feel that much better because of the sugar content. It really needs to be water between alcohol. That's the best way to do it.
So it sounds like to me that it's time, really. Time is what sobers you up.
Time.
And,
Reduced use of alcohol. Drinking water in between drinks can slow your content down because your gut gets full, so you're not going to drink as much. And also, just making sure that you do keep yourself safe and through that process.
Let's talk about that whole notion of safety, because it sounds like listening and believing the myths can be a risk, but what other risks are there?
So when we look at risks with drinking, obviously your problem solving goes out the window. So you might think, I've got to get home tonight, and you get in a car. So your problem solving, you might not think about getting a taxi or getting someone else to drive you. Your judgment is impaired, concentration is impaired, reaction times, coordination. You can have problems and risks with getting in trouble. There's high amounts of people that get in trouble with the law, commit crimes when they're drinking to excessive levels. And also it can cause confusion, blurred vision, vomiting. Those are all kind of risks that people experience when they're drinking at excessive levels, and especially coming over the festive season. I know that people do sit down, relax, and want to have a couple more than they normally do. So.
And also those risks around relationship, particularly, the prevalence of alcohol being associated with violence. People's emotions get heightened, and our sense of what's sort of right and wrong can get a bit changed when we drink. And also, having arguments with close family members and our inhibitions going down. So perhaps ending up in situations that if we hadn't been drinking, we probably would have made a different decision. So one night stands, talking with people that if we were sober, we might sort of not want to be talking with, and those sorts of things. Yeah.
I think it's good to be mindful about the country folk out there too. When you start drinking, you've got those long trips, and in those small country towns you might want to drive to the larger country towns to stock up, and so maybe stop in and have a few drinks before you end up driving back to your country town, and it can be quite risky that way. And I'm also mindful of other drugs when people go into going from the small country towns into the larger ones. Sometimes there's people purchasing other substances as well, so you might have all that in your car, and so you're at risk of being done by police and things like that. Also out on those stations in the dams and up in the water tanks, like people get drunk and they go into the dams and have a swim, and there's risk of drowning when you're really intoxicated, and getting into a water tank with mates and it can be fun, but it can also be risky.
Going down beach late at night in coastal towns, again, there's just such a huge risk around drinking and swimming. That really shouldn't swim if you've been drinking, and that can be hard to resist that. Long country drives, as Nona was saying, when there's a lack of transport and there's not taxis, there's not regular buses, if you do go out, how do you get home, and do you have a plan B when you're going out? I think can be really important as well.
Yeah, I've met plenty of men and women in prison for drink driving from up north, and they always say, I just wish I'd never got in the car and had a drink, and I should have found someone that wasn't drinking, but it was hard because everyone was. So plan to stay overnight, if you can, take a tent with you, pitch it out. That can keep risks down.
There's been a story in the news lately of a bloke that actually ran over his friend. He was drink driving.
That's right.
And if you hear his story, he's just so remorseful and just obviously regrets ever getting in the car, and that's something to keep with you, to really think about the consequences. Thinking it's not going to happen to me is not really, you need to think it might, because it does happen to some people, and
And I think we'll look a little bit more about those strategies later in the conversation.
Of how to keep safe, and it's about the sense of control. Once you choose to overindulge, it seems like the ability to control your behaviours and your choices is kind of taken over by the alcohol, and that leads to preloading. We didn't talk about that in the risk, so let's explore what that means.
Well, preloading is when people drink or drug prior to going out. I think it sort of started with pre-party drinks many years ago, and it's moved on to things like ecstasy and those other drugs that are termed in the media as party drugs. And so people do top up with alcohol and other drugs and can put themselves at risk. And it is becoming more and more risky, especially when you've got festival seasons coming on, and a lot of kids and even you know people who act as free spirit can take drugs with them to the festivals, and then they end up they get in a line and there's police that come and they down those drugs, and there's a risk. I mean, that's not so much preloading, but preloading is quite common, and because it's cheaper for people if they have a few drinks at home, and that cost actually impacts on people's decision to drink more. And
I think that's actually quite common around preloading, particularly for young people where perhaps they don't have a lot of financial resources, and so we'll have a few drinks before we go out, then we'll drink less once we're out, and inevitably that's not what happens. They drink before they go out, and then they drink more and more as they're out, increasing those risks, particularly of injury and accident when drinking.
Are there strategies though that we can use to help keep ourselves and other people safe?
Oh, I think there definitely is, and we spoke about some of those before. Do eat before you drink. Make a decision about how much you're going to drink before you go out. Not letting people top up your wine glass when you're at dinner. So you keep a really accurate number in your mind of how much you're drinking.
You can set your limits as well. I know we've discussed it before that if you set your limit, I'm only going to have 2, or you can be the driver. If you're of age to drive, you can be the designated driver. So you can say, sorry, I'm the driver tonight.
Deciding not to drink is another option, and when people do that, what they might do is drink things like lemon, lime and bitters, so it looks like they've got a drink, or there is a number of very low or non-alcoholic drinks that are now available that can be purchased. So that pressure can certainly be there when you're in a social context. We do live in a culture where alcohol is very much the norm in most celebrations. So having an alternative available, so you don't have an empty hand and people aren't going, you sure you don't want a drink, you really should have one, can be a way to get past those social pressures. I think also having a plan B is really important. So again, as you said, in a lot of country towns you don't have access to taxis and buses, and they're long country drives. So even if you are the person who's not drinking, driving home at 1 a.m. in the morning or 2 a.m. in the morning for a good hour or so probably isn't a good idea. So, can you stay at the house where you're going to? Is there an option to sleep in the car or bring a tent or have a trailer? So thinking about how am I going to get home, who's going to drive, do I want to drive, am I better to stay where I am, and really keeping yourself safe in that way.
If someone was intoxicated and needed assistance, are there some basic first aid tips that we can share for the people?
Well, you can assist people to a safe place. So if you notice that a friend's sort of going down a bit, and people do notice it, they might be a bit staggery, a bit more slurry, they might be bumping into things. So invite them to a safe place. Be firm, be clear and firm, because sometimes they can be a bit argumentative. Oh, I'm all right, and you can see that they're not, especially if you're not drinking as much or not drinking at all. So if they have started to vomit or or really seem
Pass
very
out.
intoxicated, passing out. Lay the person down in the recovery position, so that's sort of bent legs, and allow them to have clear airways. Make sure that there's no vomit in their mouth. So
Dana, just to clarify, the recovery position, that's putting the person on their side.
On their side,
and the,
knees bent, one
knees
leg
bent,
up.
the leg on top,
Yep.
a little bit over,
Yep.
so that if they do vomit, they can't
Yep.
swallow it.
One
you
arm
know.
above
One arm
the
above,
head,
yep.
other arm over the chest, and
Yeah.
that keeps you.
And then keeping the
showing we can't lay
keeping-
someone
yeah.
out.
Yeah,
and show them. But, you can always Google it. I think.
yeah, you can
It's a
Google
fairly
it.
standard
Yeah.
first aid.
It
Yeah.
is,
Response,
it's the one they
the
use
recovery
nationally.
Yeah, so keeping them in that position and allowing, checking them for breathing, because they can have very shallow breathing, and especially coming into these hot months, check for temperature as well, because it is really important that people don't get too hot or even too cold, because you might actually take them inside to air conditioning and they might get really, really cold. So just to be mindful of that. Always checking their breathing as well, because if they have vomited, they can, that can be dangerous, and people do breathe in vomit and they can get aspirated pneumonia and things like that. So just to be mindful of that.
And I guess also trying to find out, either asking them or the people with them what they have taken. Have they just been drinking alcohol? Have they taken any other substances? And if ever in doubt, ringing 000.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And if they're starting to fall unconscious, if you can't get them to respond anymore, you do need to call 000 straight away. I think that's definitely.
I think they get clammy and quite a bit bluish tinge as well when they're starting to become unconscious and breathing is an issue. Yeah, so get help. Don't hesitate to get help.
Yeah, that's what it's there for. It's just a phone call.
Yeah.
Yeah. The effects of alcohol and other drugs that we've talked about today, that they're quite visible effects of overindulgence. But what are some of the other hidden indulgences that we experience in this time of the year?
I'd say food would be one of them. I mean, it's a very socially acceptable indulgence, that's for sure, but sometimes the idea of overindulgence is a little bit more hidden.
So, let's talk about what we're all having for Christmas lunch this year.
Well, I'm going home for Christmas, and when I say home, I mean back to the UK. So I'll be having a really traditional Christmas lunch. It'll be about -5 probably. So.
Snowing, hopefully?
Yeah, I hope so. So all that kind of turkey and roast veggies and all that warm food.
Okay. Which sounds a bit silly at this time of the year, but we still do that here in Australia.
Yeah, we're doing
what
that.
about you, Nona?
Yeah, we're doing that.
Yep.
We're having the traditional, but we'll be out by the pool and ready to jump in afterwards.
Yeah. And you, Fiona?
Yeah, same. We'll be having traditional food sitting alongside your prawns and your salads, and a lot of moving around as well. So it's not just one meal. It's going to my family, going to my partner's family, going to extended family. So, it starts at 7 in the morning and it finishes at 12 at night. With probably a nap in between. Just mandatory on Christmas Day. So definitely an indulgence in terms of the food that we eat on that day, which we wouldn't normally really ever eat in that way.
Yeah, so what are some of the dangers around that? Just one lunch is enough, let alone hopping from house to house.
Yeah, so just to make that point before we go on, one big day of eating, it's not gonna do you any harm. Just wanted to make that point quite clearly. Don't want to scare anyone that they can't have their Christmas lunches or lunch. But in short, the dangers of overindulging is weight gain, really. And that's associated with other lifestyle diseases that we spoke about before, like cancer, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. Weight gain during the festive period is incredibly hard to shift. The reason for that is because it's rapid weight gain, it happens very quickly, and because it sits around this area here. And that sits on our organs. It's called visceral fat, and it's the most dangerous fat to put on. Excessive, and really I'll make the point here that weight gain is usually due to excessive eating over a long period of time, because the festive season these days starts kind of early December, even end of November, with work parties and social functions, and it can go on into mid-Jan, New Year's and that kind of thing. So it's that constant overeating and that can lead.
And also adding to that if there's excessive drinking or indulging in drinking, because that also can contribute to
huge
weight
amount
gain.
of calories. Yeah, certainly.
Because we've got Christmas Day, Boxing Day, New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, all those,
Yeah, definitely.
Can you give us some tips about how to enjoy food over this period without it going into that unhealthy realm?
Yeah, sure. The first tip that I would give is to not deny yourself. There's lots of lovely food available at this time of year, and don't say to yourself, I can't have something, because you kind of put this really mysterious, forbidden thing on that food, and then you'll end up overindulging on it at another time. So you have that one mince pie or have that bit of Christmas pudding, just don't have 10 or don't have a huge bowl or 3 bowls. So really it's just, little bits of everything. Moderation.
And not every day for 2 weeks.
Yeah. Plan beforehand, so keep in mind that if you're going to have a Christmas lunch or you're going to a function, a barbecue, maybe have a light breakfast that day, maybe you plan to have a salad or something like that for your dinner, just being aware that, that one meal might take up, all your calories for that entire day. So be, be moderate around your other meals.
I think in that as well, if you've got those, going to the family, going to the in-laws, going to see friends, taking smaller portions.
Yeah.
We'll at those meals.
Certainly get to portion size. Wait on seconds. So it takes about 20 minutes for our bodies to process food. So you might finish your meal and immediately get up to get that second plate. Just wait a little bit, have a bit of a chat to the person next to you, and then maybe 15, 20 minutes time, if you still want some more, get up. But quite often you'll feel full, you'll feel satisfied after 20 minutes. Eating a healthy meal before social events is really important, particularly around social events that are going to involve not only alcohol, but also that nibble food, and that's quite often incredibly unhealthy and incredibly high in calories. It's often got a lot of pastry in it. So having, a healthy, nutritious meal before you go, that's going to mean when you get there, you don't feel the need to pick on all that food. Like Fee said earlier, watch your portion size. So have those meals, but just have a smaller amount. Like we also mentioned earlier, be aware of calories contained in drinks. And I don't only just mean alcohol, also soft drinks at this time of year become more socially acceptable, they're more available, and that's not just for adults but also for kids. Be aware of the sugar content and the calorie content involved in these drinks. It's huge, and just so you're better off having water really, and just seeing them as a treat thing.
And caffeine content as well, again, in that mixing with alcohol and the interaction that has.
Yeah, it can be quite deadly. And my last point would be get plenty of exercise. If you're indulging a little bit during this period, make sure you're going out, you're having 2-hour walks, maybe having a run, going to the gym a bit more, and that will balance out that extra food that you're having.
Absolutely.
What I'm hearing really clearly is the importance on balance and having a plan. But what about our bank balances at this time of year?
Yeah, certainly they're put under pressure, aren't they? And the recent stats say we're going to spend $3.5 billion this Christmas, and that's just Western Australians. So I'm sure that Colin is ecstatic about that. Great for the economy and it's great for the retail sector, but it's really important that we don't spend more than we have, because we can get into some serious debt around this time of year.
I certainly know that during Christmas between gifts and going out and various other things, it takes me about 2 months to catch up financially.
Referred to as the Christmas debt trap, and it's not only gifts, it's food, it's travel at that time of year. It all takes its toll.
Yeah, what about the health dangers of the financial spending or overspending at this time of year?
Yeah, and we don't often think about that, health dangers and money, but it can cause a lot of stress and anxiety if we overspend. It can really have an impact, on our own sense of self, but also our relationships. We know that most relationships breakdowns are caused by financial disagreements. So, if you're getting into a lot of financial problems at this time of year, that's going to impact on, maybe your relationship with your partner or your other family members as well.
And that, loaning money and there's no more money coming in. So again, as you said, that stress and anxiety, it can also lead to overindulgences in terms of buying things that you normally wouldn't. You wouldn't buy. And as a result of the stress and anxiety, particularly if that debt becomes bigger and bigger over time and you never manage to rein it back in, issues around depression,
Certainly.
family breakdown.
I think also too, the people that I've worked with, a lot of people make their New Year's resolutions and stop drinking or stop drugging during the year, and then it comes up to Christmas and there's a lot of triggers there for financial spending, and I've got to buy my children, I've got to do this, and those pressures can actually really impact on their ability to stay sober, and so those overindulgences start to creep back in again to help minimise the emotional effect that it's having as well. So.
Definitely.
Yeah, a lot of internal pressure that we have as well as the external pressure.
Yeah.
And we could probably do a whole segment on media pressure around this time of year of, you know, what to buy and what to do. But let's just focus on some hope. What are some tips for this time of the year to avoid the misspending?
Certainly, and there's quite a lot of them. One is pay for your gifts in cash. So withdraw an amount of cash from your bank account, have that as your budget. Psychologically, they say that removing cash from your wallet has much more of an effect on us than using your plastic card. So that's a great way to do it. It means that you generally will stick to your budget more so than if you use a debit or credit card. Which leads on to have a budget. You know, make a list of everyone that you're going to buy for and have an amount per person, and really try hard to stick to that and not to go over. Resist impulse purchasing, which can be hard. I had a laugh with the ladies yesterday. I said, don't shop the week before Christmas. That's the worst time for impulse buying. It's also the worst time. That's when retailers try and trap you. They'll leave out those kind of gifts near the register, and you think, oh, I've got to buy that because I've got to get a present for someone at work, and that's when you generally overspend. I think Nicole said that that's when she does all her Christmas shopping the week before
pretty
Christmas.
much.
So.
It's like I just wake up and realise, oops, it's Christmas time.
But I think also being thoughtful about what we're purchasing people for gifts, and there are a lot of other options than just buying a trinket or something that really is not going to be used. You know, there's options to donate money, there's options to purchase. I know I've got a breakfast coming up and there's a number of guests coming, and we're purchasing them a gift, and we're purchasing them chickens.
Yeah, from the Oxfam catalogue, yeah.
And
they're great.
this year we went to an organisation and put our money together for work, and we're going to do selected grants to people. So we put our money together instead of buying those $5 gifts that you give. We're putting it in, and each when the money gets paid back, because they get it and then they pay it back. And and so we can help all around the world, and then help more people and build on that. So it was a nice idea for Christmas.
We also talked yesterday about non-financial gifts as well, like the IOUs. So for those that don't have an abundance of spare money in general, let alone at this time of the year, so things like, offering to do someone's ironing or cleaning their house, or going out for some sort of special picnic or something along those lines in moderation.
I think particularly for young people that can be a really good idea when they don't have a lot of cash in their hands, and children, offering to wash the car.
I used to make my parents vouchers. Give them to them, like a car cleaning voucher. And
they cash them in. So I think that can be, if you get your kids and let them know they don't have to purchase gifts for everyone or a gift for you, but they can give you gifts in other ways that can be far more satisfying.
Nothing wrong with a hug at Christmas time.
Exactly. I think what we talked about earlier in the media, that probably leads on to my next point, which is to not go nuts. There is so much pressure on us at this time of year to buy, not only for our family, but our next door neighbours, for people at work, for the dog. It's too much. If you can afford to do it and you want to do it, then do it. If you can't afford to do it, then take a breath and actually think about what Christmas is really about. It's not about gift giving, and it can all get a little bit silly, I suppose, at this time of year.
And I was just thinking then, one of the other things that can be quite common around gift purchasing, and I think it can be a real trap or risk, is the
online purchasing, especially out in the bush. You've got your online, and people. I've just recently worked with people that have talked about online buying and the difficulty that it's led, because there's the hooks that are in that online buying as well, and the invitation to just buy one more, and this little bit can add to that.
And as Sarah said, that it's a step removed, so it's not like spending real money, except it is absolutely spending real money.
And that leads me to my last point, which is either cut up or freeze your credit card at this time of year. If you've not got a plan to pay it back, and you don't think you can pay it back, it's not your money, it's the bank's money, and they will ask for it back.
With interest.
Yep, they might give you a few months after Christmas, they generally do, but by middle of the year your interest rate will go right back up again. So this time of year, maybe pop it in the freezer for a few months, not a bad idea.
Being thoughtful, it sounds like, across all of those areas of high risk overindulgence, it is vital at this time, so that you can have a healthy, festive season. Well, that brings us to the end. Is there anything that you would like each of you to ensure that people take home with them today? I'll start with you, Fiona.
Really, I think it's important to be aware of what you're drinking. That's a real key message for me. Don't drink and drive. Just, if you're going to drink, leave the car. And to stay safe and look after each other. This is such should be such a joyous time of year, a time to be with friends and family and to have a break. And we will have those indulgences, but just, stay safe, look after each other.
Thank you. Sarah, anything you'd like to add?
For me, it's just have a plan, have a think about what you're doing, and moderation, and that goes for everything: spending, food, alcohol. Maybe not so much the drugs. My recommendation would be to stay off those altogether. But you can enjoy your Christmas and just have a little bit of everything rather than too much of everything.
Nona?
Yeah, look after yourself, look after your families, take care of yourselves, enjoy, laugh, and relax over the Christmas New Year period, and don't drink too much or drug too much, and it should all be really nice for you. Happy Christmas.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the panel today. So thank you, Fiona.
Oh, thank you. It's been
Sarah,
a pleasure.
No worries.
And Nona.
Thank you.
This was the last Rural InReach broadcast for 2013, so a huge thanks to all of you out there for sticking through with us all this year with our broadcasts. We really look forward to seeing you all in 2014. Like the panel said, be kind to yourself, take care of yourself and your family over this year, and we'll see you next year. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.